This is an interview with Lakwena Maciver. Lakwena is a London-based artist with mixed Ugandan and British heritage. She's best known for her public murals painted internationally. She has created work from installations at Tate Britain, Somerset House, Facebook and the South Bank Centre in London, to a juvenile detention centre in Arkansas, a monastery in Vienna, and the Bowery Wall in New York City. Her work, primarily text-based, employs a combination of words, bold patterns, and acid bright colour to subtly subvert prevailing mythologies in mass media. We join this conversation as Lakwena shares her artwork. So let's jump and see some of your artwork. What influenced you in your designs and in your artwork?
Well, it's been a long journey. So I graduated 10 years ago now. I think it's 10 years ago, maybe even 11. It's been a long journey and I'm always evolving, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I studied graphic design and illustration, and it was a very conceptual approach to graphic design and illustration. So it was very much about, it could be sculpture, it could be, very conceptual basically. And I hated that at first, but then I started to embrace it, and I ended up making these huge, large-scale paintings of words and patterns and colors, kind of similar to what I'm doing now, to be honest, but a bit more raw. So that you can kind of see it in my work. I'm interested in typography. Letters are just really, since I was a kid, I've always been interested in words. That's generally what I used to draw, was words. I also drew like figurative stuff, but words I find really interesting. And I think I've always been interested in, I guess, the sign writing, the kind of that tradition. I remember always referencing like African hand sign written signs that if any time you spend in Africa, you'll generally see these, like at barber shops, or even if you come to like Ridley Road in Dalston, you'll see just hand painted signs. I love color. I'm interested in, you mentioned in your intro, mass media, advertising. And I think I've always been interested in the way that adverts, especially historically, would be designed to attract attention. But ultimately, they're just trying to coerce you, selling you something, which is kind of a shame, bit of a waste as well. And so I remember, don't think about it so much now, but I remember I used to think about the idea of adopting that and reappropriating it to communicate something more meaningful. But the idea of attracting attention and dazzling people and making something look like electric, I love that. And it just gets your attention, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely.
So, yeah. So, and I want people to see what I'm saying. So I think that's kind of a basic description of how I've come to where I am now. But it's always evolving. I'm really excited. Recently, I've started introducing like a figurative element into my work. And that's really fun. That's just wider. You could go anywhere, couldn't you? So I'm kind of just like peeking into that at the moment. Yeah.
Exciting. Tell me more about your text. So you definitely play with words and phrases, and maybe from a more of a Christian background or understanding, you're like, oh, that rings a bell, or like it's always maybe not conclusive, or it leaves you hanging, or because it's not as well, not at all too aggressive either. It's not like you're saying a thing and you leave, there's a sort of air of curiosity in it as well.
Yeah, so like I've said, I like words. It's kind of what you said, really. I tell, there's a story I've told before about one time when I was in Vegas, because I've painted in Vegas a couple of times. And there was a time I was in Vegas when, it's full of casinos. There were a few artists who were painting walls there. I was one of them. And there was another artist who decided to make a comment on gambling in his piece, because it's really depressing when you go there and you see it. You go to the casinos and people just sit there all day, like totally, and the type of people who are there are people you can see maybe don't have that many other options. And it's just really depressing. And clearly these people are being used, basically. They're not getting anything from it. They're addicted. So this artist decided to make a comment on gambling. The thing is, the walls that we were painting were casinos, so they were owned by casino owners. So he decided to make a comment on gambling, to criticize it, and he painted this piece, and within a day it was painted over. That's always stuck with me, that story. I never even saw the piece, but I was told this happened, and it's always stuck with me because it struck me that is what Jesus was talking about with parables, when he used to tell parables.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I used to be so frustrated with the parables thing. So I was like, why didn't he just like spell it out? Why make it confusing? Why make it so that you have to have it explained to you? Do you know what I mean? And I know there's probably a variety of reasons for it, but I think one of the reasons was that he couldn't necessarily reveal everything, and in a way with my text, bringing it back around to answer your question, in a way with my text, that's always in the forefront of my mind. There's things that I want to say. I'm interested in speaking into our culture, responding to it. I choose my words carefully, and I'm aware that if I'm too just like whatever about it, too blasé about it, my work may well be painted over, right? Or just not received. So that's kind of a journey I'm on. I'm always thinking about that, basically. How do I say what I want to say, but say it in a way that will be received rather than painted over? But also, I mean, this piece here, this was a commission for Nike, so they gave me the words. And if I don't have a problem with the words, I'm happy to paint them if you're paying me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I guess through all of the work that I do, because I do like commercial commissions as well as my own work. Through all of it, there are these messages and these themes, which is quite nice. They kind of weave through. And then, when you're working for a brand, you've got to go along with what they want, right? And so I'm not going to compromise what I believe in. But sometimes I'm using other people's words, and I'm fine with that, as long as it kind of ties into what I'm thinking. Do you want to ask the next question if I'm rambling on?
No, because actually that leads me perfectly to my next question of like, how do you balance your client's desires to your own vision?
I mean, it's nice because people come to me because they want what I do. So that's nice. So I don't have to change what I do that much. Sometimes I get a bit tired of them wanting, sometimes I've kind of become known for doing something positive, and that can be a bit annoying because it's like, okay, like that can just get a bit annoying because it's just very surface. But often I'll try and weave in. I know what I'm intending when I'm making something, and on the surface it may seem quite basic, but I know what I'm meaning it to be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The significance for me. So there's that. But then also I'm really enjoying just at the moment doing less commercial work and doing more of my own work.
Yeah.
Because I can pretty much say what I like. And there's just more freedom, which I love. Because a lot of my work is public. Just even if it's not for a brand, it's got to be approved by whoever's commissioning it. And it's got to be, kind of like almost a neutrality to it, so that it kind of appeals to a wide base. Whereas with my paintings, I can paint what I like. People can buy it or not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm enjoying that. I'm getting to do a bit of that, which is kind of a new growth thing for me, which I'm loving.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about like the technicality of your artwork. How do you get the bright colors? How do you do the large scale? So maybe the more technical side of creating especially the big murals, maybe. Yeah.
When it's the big murals, a lot of it is quite mathematical in a way. Not that complicated, but I always enjoyed maths. So a lot of it is quite, well, sometimes I'll just project an image and trace it out, but other times I will measure out, kind of scale it up using various, if I'm working on a building like this one, there'll be certain lines that have almost provided a grid for me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And apply patterns into that pre-existing grid.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. And these fades and the bright colours, any special paints or?
No, I mean, no, they're bright. I guess I like a little bit of, people always ask me about color theory. You know, when you have two contrasting colors on the color wheel of a similar, can't remember the word, but like orange and green.
Yeah.
They look like they're vibrating and you get almost the effect of one jumping, and there's no neons involved, no fluorescence. So I quite like using a bit of that, but generally it's all quite intuitive. It's all quite instinctive with color. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. A last question about your artwork. So the whole thing is like, we do art for God's glory, and as Christians, we want to seek God's kingdom as we do work. But it's so hard to physically do that practically, as like how do I glorify God in my studio, and as you paint and as you design, and how you perform and how you do. So in your thinking, how do you glorify God in your work?
Well, practically, when I'm making work, I'm quite prayerful about it. Very much like the beginning of everything I do. I'll be praying to God for him to work through it. I'm often meditating on scriptures and kind of working from that place. Even when it's commercial work, actually, which they wouldn't realize. It's like, okay, God, I've got this job. I want it to bring glory to you. Please direct me and lead me and let it bring glory to you. That's it, really. Just asking him for that. And then obviously using my brain, my intellect to think, okay, how can I make this something I'm actually excited about, that actually means something? Even though at the end of the day, sometimes it's just about selling trainers. For me, it ends up being something that's more significant. And the nice thing about that is then I'll do my own project later on, which can feed off that, but it's completely almost pure, like it's got no other motives attached to it. So I think, being prayerful is all that I practically do, and then scripture being a part of it, which obviously lends itself to my work because it's text-based. But practically, how do I glorify God through my work? I think that's it. And then the way it seems to work, it's really exciting. I enjoy it. It's not like the whole time I'm feeling inspired. Sometimes you don't, do you?
No.
Sometimes you feel a bit dry, and sometimes you just have to put it down and just say it's not happening. But then when it does happen, it's really fun. And music is a big part of what I do, to be honest. I listen to a lot of music, and you'll see quite a lot of my recent paintings are sometimes referencing lyrics. The reason, and they're not necessarily Christian music, but I feel like God speaks to me through various lyrics. So many as a culture, secular culture, so much of it is about love. So much of music is about love. From obviously a secular standpoint, it's all about God, isn't it? It's all about Jesus. The way I read it. And so I'm quite interested in that kind of interplay. I mean, I like that book you mentioned, Lois, at the beginning about popular culture, because I'm interested in that way that popular culture speaks about stuff. And when I see it, I'm like, well, that's God, isn't it? Because no one else can, I will always love you. Well, really? Who's really always going to love me is God, because everyone else kind of, do you know what I mean? It's anyway. So I'm music is quite a big part of what I do. It inspires me.
Fantastic. Okay, let's talk about your university years. So your university experience. So how did you start to understand how your faith relates to your artwork? So sort of what books or groups or discussion helped you formulate an understanding of your creativity and your faith?
I don't feel like I had that much guidance. I feel like I was kind of working out on my own. I did enjoy interfaith.
Yeah.
I wasn't like a regular hardcore person there, but just little things. And I remember actually I used to go to the meetings, which is so weird. They used to be round the corner from my house where I live now, which was miles from where I used to live. But yeah, at St. Barnabas, this do you remember that freezing cold church?
Yeah.
So yeah, like I used to go to the meetings and a whole load of it went right over my head. I used to be like, it was all very because also I came from a I wasn't like, and I'm still not super well read, and also I wasn't studying fine art, so my art history was a bit sketchy, and a lot of the stuff that they used to talk about was like really a lot of kind of theory and a lot of anyway, so a lot of it used to go over my head, but I found it quite intriguing. And I think I was coming from a slightly different place, basically, quite a bit more like less intellectual, not really less intellectual, but less thoroughly, well versed in theory and all that. So I used to find it quite exciting, to be honest, because I'd be like, oh, don't know if I caught that. Anyway, so that was interesting. And I'd say I did get a little bit from that. But yeah, I didn't, in terms of working out how my faith was worked out through my work. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I think kind of like anyone in life, right? Like a nurse, you don't necessarily have a Christian nurses club at the nurse school. You just do what Jesus called us to do, which is to just work out whatever we're doing, give glory to him, whatever we're doing, try and do it to the best of do it unto him, so that's basically what I did. Yeah, and that's what it looked like for me in being an artist.
Yeah. And I think, thinking through those meetings, a lot of it went over our head.
Okay.
It wasn't just you. I think we all feel like that in life. Everything goes on, and you just catch a glimpse once in a while, and it inspires you, and you try to look that you're understanding. Yeah. So you went to UAL. What was the main challenges or opportunities that you had there? You faced as a Christian? Sort of what did you encounter while in art uni? Either like idols you encounter, or what was encouraging?
I don't feel like there were that many challenges in terms of as a believer. I think at times when I was talking about projects that were about God, the teachers, the tutors kind of didn't really get it, but that's okay, because I guess they wouldn't. Yeah, but it was a bit of a weird experience for me in uni, because it was, like I say, quite solitary. It was not, I think a lot of people say this about London unis, the fact that they are there's no campus like as like it is in other unis.
Yeah.
So for me it was really about the work, and I didn't really have many challenges with the work apart from just a very critical one particular tutor who was very critical, not picking out me only, just of everyone, which was just a real downer. But that wasn't because of my faith. Pretty enlightening experience. First half, like I say, I hated, because it was so conceptual, and I wasn't from that background of thinking like that. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. I was really like, skeptical of modern art. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
As most people are, to be honest, outside of arty circles. Just like, how can a black square be considered art? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
After about midway, it's funnily enough, I went on this Christian retreat, which was all about transforming your mind, renewing your mind. And it sounds weird, but it's seriously, like, the time I felt nothing from it, but ever since that point, my mind was just open. I was just like open to all of these ideas. It was like, okay, yeah, why not give it a shot? It's okay. And it just completely transformed my whole approach to the thing. I started embracing this whole kind of conceptual thinking. I was like, okay, yeah, it's something in this. Yeah, that was my journey from uni. So I enjoyed it. I ended up enjoying it, appreciating it.
Yeah. Tell me about, like, maybe your so most maybe other students here, freshers, they're coming to uni for the first time. Like, how did you make the most of uni, and how did you make friends? and maybe leading on to, like, if you met yourself as a student, what advice
Yeah.
would you give to yourself?
Yeah, so what would I say to myself is a good question. I think I would say use the opportunity to get to make some friends. I'd say that.
Yeah.
Maybe that's obvious. For me,
Yeah.
I was really on the work.
Yeah.
I think also the type of people who were on my course, I was a minority, so it was almost all white people, which just is not unusual, but I kind of felt a bit like I was different from them, right? Also, most of them were not from London, I was, so there's kind of a difference. But so yeah, so there weren't that many people like me. But I actually did enjoy what I'd liked about LCC was it was kind of, there were quite a lot of local people who went to the uni, because they had quite a lot of like different types of courses there. So I enjoyed that, and there were quite a lot of like people like that. But yeah, I'd say I wish that I had made an effort to just get to know some more people who I actually was interested in, especially because where I'm at now is such a different part of life. And they always say, right? They always say, advice I hear again and again to artists is be part of a creative community. I hear that again and again. And that starts at uni, basically, because where else are you going to meet artists, right? So that is something that I think is great advice, is start to connect with people. It totally makes sense. And if you like someone, get to know them. I mean, that's, again, to some people that's obvious. To me, it's not obvious, because I'm like, well, I don't know if, I don't know. But anyway, be proactive and just connect with people who you find intriguing, because it's such an exciting time of your life, to be honest. I didn't realize that, but it's a really exciting time of your life, and you don't know where you're going to go, but you don't know where you're going to end up. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah. And I totally sort of relate to you, actually, because maybe you come from maybe more, well, the Arts Foundation, it's all about the marks and you work, and you already have made friends because you've been through school with them. And then sometimes you go to uni, maybe in that mindset of like, I need the marks, and then forget actually like building community and collaborating with friends will actually lead me to more jobs at the end. Or
That's true. That's true. And just getting to know people. And also, there's no rules, especially at in an arts uni, because I remember there were people on my course who, for instance, would go and do like an internship with our tutors, one of our tutors who was, a practicing artist, practicing designer. And like, you don't get that if you're like studying medicine, but in an arts uni you can do stuff like that. Like, there's no rules. I'm very kind of like this in my head, but there's no rules. So that's where connection and friendship, and to be honest, all of the opportunities that I've had, like kind of big breaks and stuff, have come through people that I knew. And especially in the creative industry, so much of it is about people who you know. And for me, it wasn't because I was like, I had all these friends at uni who I used to go clubbing with and who I used to hang out with and blah, blah, blah. That's the story for some people. For me, it's just bizarrely, God provided these relationships, friends at church, or even people who I just bumped into. I can see God orchestrated it so that even somebody like me, who's not particularly sociable, ended up getting opportunities through people I knew, because that's basically how it goes. Yeah. So don't panic if you're not sociable, but also think to yourself, I could be a bit more sociable.
Which leads me to the perfect next question. It's, what did you do after uni? How did you get these opportunities and these breaks to do such, brilliant artwork in all these different places?
When I first came out, I was doing a lot of like flyer designs for friends' music. I kind of used to like look down on it and feel like, this isn't what I want to be doing. I want to be doing great, like I want to be doing epic stuff. But I learned a lot in doing that, and I got money, right? Because people didn't need paintings, but they needed flyers. And I needed, CD designs, which was back then. I used to do a lot of that at the beginning, and also I was working out like kind of my voice. Also working out like commercially how you work with fees, getting paid, invoicing people, just basic stuff like that. Business side of stuff, really. Making a lot of mistakes. I did a bit of sign writing. I did a lot of different stuff, all quite bitty. And I slowly started to kind of make a tiny little bit of a name for myself. I was doing really kind of smaller scale, kind of illustrative stuff, because that's what people needed and were going to pay for. And then a friend of a friend had a friend who was curating this show in Miami, painting painting walls. And this friend of the friend said, would you be up for this? And I was like, yeah, but okay, it's not really going to happen. And then it happened. And that was like a massive thing for me, because it showed people that I could paint walls. And I think probably it coinciding with Instagram was really handy from like a PR perspective. And so that was a really big moment for me. I was terrified, but I just said yes. That's always a good tip. If you're scared, just say yes and work out how to do it. And made loads of mistakes and bit off way more than I could chew, but you kind of muddle through. So that was kind of my journey.
How do you, before going to maybe, the success stories, how did you deal with rejection or failures, or, you said, oh, I bit too much, chew, burnout, or like, how did you, before having the success, how did you deal with maybe the low points?
You did, like, there were quite a few jobs. I did one job, one of my first jobs out of uni was a tutor hooked it up for me. Was painting some leather jackets, not my designs, painting someone else's designs on some leather jackets, which I'd never done before. Didn't know what I was doing. And I did them, they took forever. And the money was like, I ended up getting paid maybe £5 an hour when you broke it down. But I learned a lot. And basically there was quite a lot of stuff like that where you do it and you're just like, oh, this hasn't, I think that's typical, like, because you've got to try this stuff and give it a shot. But then you just keep it moving and you add it to your portfolio, and people don't know that you got paid £5 an hour for it, or you got paid nothing for it, I mean, I got loads of rejections, to be honest. I wanted to, the typical thing for someone from my degree was to go and do an internship, right, at a design agency. I just could never get one. My way of dealing with that was, okay, well, I'll just do me. What can I do, which was, okay, I'll go and paint signs in the market, or do flyer designs. Just do what you can with what you got, basically, because that's all you can do. And if people are not accepting, are rejecting you, jobs and stuff, well, what can you do? And actually, looking back, it's good, because it meant that I worked out my own interesting voice that then people, it's kind of, maybe it's a harder way of doing it, because it would have been nice to work for an agency, have a boss who could teach me, basically. And I didn't really get taught by anyone. I had to learn everything myself. But you gain stuff from that. One thing I would say is I learned, because I can be quite transparent, and I can be like, someone says, how are you? And I'm like, well, I'm a bit depressed, or this has happened, or that's happened. One thing I learned in terms of when talking about my work was to be positive, not about lying, but someone who I knew within the industry at whatever level, who was like, oh, so how's it going? Just to say the positives, because why you got to tell the negatives? Yeah, it's going well. I got this thing, I got that thing, boom. So that's one thing I've learned, and I need, every so often I have to remind myself, they don't need to know the sad story. They don't need to know that. And actually, in terms of your career progression, telling people about the good things is really helpful, because then they think of you and they remember, oh, she did, and she's got a positive attitude. Things are going well for her. Even if, you were crying last night because you feel frustrated about this or that. Do you know what I mean? So that's something that I've learned, and I have to remind myself of, because some people naturally do that. I don't. I tend to tell them, what I'm struggling with. But they don't need to know that.
Yeah.
When it's about work, they don't need to know that.
So how did you get the big breaks? Tell us about the big projects in New York and in Arkansas.
Arkansas,
Yeah.
Yeah, basically one thing leads to another. I definitely have been given opportunities, like the Miami thing. That for me was a massive break for me. But interestingly, before that, something like Secret Garden Party, that was through me contacting, like cold calling people, effectively emailing.
Yeah.
And just saying, look, I can do this. Can I do something for you? And that Secret Garden Party thing prepared me for Miami. I mean, Miami was a whole nother level of madness. That Secret Garden Party in itself was a whole level of madness. But, and also telling people that I'd done this Secret Garden Party thing was good. They didn't know that I got paid basically nothing, and it was a madness, and I didn't know what I was doing. But I could tell people, oh yeah, I've got this. When people were saying, hi, how's it going? I was like, well, I'm doing a stage at Secret Garden Party. People were like, oh wow, it sounds good. When it was really DIY, and it went great. Took pictures of it. But so that's one point, is that you can make opportunities, document them, show people what you're capable of. It doesn't have to be perfect, and you don't have to get paid for it. And then when other opportunities come, you've learned a few things, made a few mistakes, learned a few things, and you're also just building your portfolio. But then you can't force opportunities like Miami. That was just God's provision, right? I won't pretend that's because, interestingly, the woman who got me to do that, she'd seen my paintings that I did at the end of uni, those big ones that I was speaking about. Yeah. So she'd seen them, and she'd had them in a show actually. So she knew that about me. So that's why she was interested in my work. Yeah. So that was good. But the fact that she had that opportunity in Miami was just like, I didn't orchestrate that, So, I guess be consistent, try and make consistently good work, as good as you can, that you're happy with, and take every opportunity. Because I could have said no to Miami because I was scared. I remember, before I went, having almost I don't have panic attacks, but I think I virtually had a panic attack before I went. This was a 130-foot long wall by 20-foot high. I had never done anything like this before. So, I think I basically had a bit of a panic attack about that. I didn't know what I was doing. I had one friend who I contacted. I knew he was like kind of a street artist. I contacted him and asked him about, working on a large scale, scaling things up. It was a mission. But basically I thought, I can't turn this down. It's also very exciting. But I think I could have said no because it was uncomfortable, especially while you're young and while you haven't got responsibilities. You can afford to be a bit uncomfortable. I feel like now where I'm at, I can still be uncomfortable, but I've got less time to be uncomfortable. Do you know what I mean? There's just so many. I'm older. I'm, I've got 2 kids. I just don't have the time to be working till 3 a.m. for a week. While you are young, you've got that energy where you can just go in hard and just, be uncomfortable, be scared, because it'll be all right. And you muddle your way through. So that's kind of the advice I'd give, some of the advice I'd give.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Another question as well is, how do you feel about Christian artists allowing secular art influence their work? So art that's about pain or non-religious life experience.
I think that's fine, because the world is not neatly segmented, is it, into secular, Christian. The world is all there, and pain is experienced by everyone. There don't need to be any compartments. We're all influenced by each other, aren't we? So our neighbours who are Christian or not Christian, I think that's great. I think it's really good to have a conversation Do you know what I mean? And through your work, because I don't think God wants us to be in like these separate bubbles where we don't interact or engage with culture or like what's happening outside of the church. Just always want to keep your integrity and just, I guess, listen to God and check that you are not, just be in the world, not of the world, you know?
Yeah, no, it's a really great answer.
Thank you so much, Lakwena. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for listening, everyone.